Welcome back again to our last lesson in the Synoptic Gospels unit of our Christian Scriptures course. The book of Acts, or the Acts of the Apostles, is a great adventure story. Travel is the word that comes to mind when I think about Acts. That's why I came here to Edgewater to look down on the transportation center where you see the light rail station there, and if it were on a Saturday you'd probably see a lot more buses down there. And then behind the building there is the ferry station, and of course all the New York Waterway buses that are down there. And then on the other side, all the harbor with the ships that are departing from there to go all over the world. All of this reminded me of travel, which is the key word for me for the book of Acts. Of course, back then, at the time of the apostles, people traveled on foot, by wagon, by horse or donkey, or by ship. Well, the book of Acts is the only biblical book that tells us the story of the apostles after the death of Jesus. The only biblical book that gives us insight into the building of the early church. And a book that puts the workings of the Holy Spirit front and center. You may rightfully ask why this book comes up within the section of the Synoptic Gospels, as the book of Acts is neither a gospel, nor does it have any other books to be seen with together, synoptic. And you are right. It actually doesn't belong into the unit of the Synoptic Gospels. But then again, what else would it be grouped with? It is pretty much a unique kind of book in the New Testament. But because of its connection to the Gospel of Luke, that Luke was the author also of the book of Acts, and because of its continued storyline from the Gospel of Luke, it makes sense to talk about it here. Short of creating a single unit for the Acts of the Apostles alone, it is perfectly placed within the New Testament canon, right after the 4 Gospels and right before the 13 letters of Paul, or the Pauline tradition. We already discussed the connection point between the Gospel of Luke and Acts, namely that they are both addressed to Theophilus, who we learned is not a real person but anyone who loves God, as the name Theophilus means, the lover of God. And that the Gospel of Luke ends in chapter 24 with the ascension of Jesus into heaven, while Acts picks up the story of the ascension in the very beginning, in Acts 1, verse 6 through 11, and uses it as its starting point for the continued story. And while Jesus is the main character in the Gospel, in Acts we see that the Holy Spirit takes on the leading role. And so here are a few characteristics about the Acts of the Apostles. First, the use of the word we. There are 140 occurrences of the word we in the book of Acts. Only 2 Corinthians has we 148 times. There is no other biblical book in which the word we appears more often. In 2 Corinthians, we is used as a royal we, referring to Paul himself, although it could also refer to Paul's mission team. However, in the book of Acts, out of the 140 occurrences, the word we refers 73 times to the narrator of the book. This begins in Acts 16:10, where it appears that the author of the book is personally joining the story. It is also where the story takes a different outlook. Second, in the first part of the book, in Acts chapter 1 through 15, the story is told from a third-person perspective. Luke is narrating this, much like in the Gospel, as someone who is putting the story together from other people's accounts. For the rest of the book, in Acts chapter 16 through 28, Luke is traveling with Paul and narrates the story as an eyewitness. Third, a good question is, who are the leading characters in the book of Acts? At first, one might say the apostles, with Peter as the leader and all the other disciples of Jesus, who are in leading roles. But then Paul suddenly takes center stage in the second part of Acts. So then, who then is at the center of the story throughout the entire book? We could say that it would still be Jesus. Everything that the apostles are doing is centered around Jesus. So you could say that Jesus is the main character in both the Gospel and in Acts. But then, what is the driving force behind everything that the apostles are doing? There's another word that comes up in the book of Acts more often than in any other biblical book. It is the word Spirit. Spirit comes up 62 times, most of the times in combination with the word holy. Only 5 times does the word spirit refer to an evil spirit with a lowercase s. The Spirit with a capital S is the driving force throughout the entire story in Acts. The Spirit directs people in Acts 8:14-24. The Spirit snatches Philip away after he baptized a eunuch from Ethiopia in Acts 8:39. The Spirit tells people to do things in Acts 11:15, and the Spirit forbids Paul, Timothy, and Silas to go to Asia in Acts 16:6-7. So one might come to the conclusion that the real main character in the book of Acts is the Holy Spirit, or the Spirit of Jesus. Fourth, you will notice how the Spirit is driving the gospel message of Jesus far beyond the borders of Judea and Galilee, the places where Jesus was active in the gospel. Here in Acts, Jesus' message reaches the Gentiles, people from Ethiopia, the eunuch, the people in Galatia, in Asia Minor, then to Europe, to Greece, and finally all the way to Rome. And everyone is included and welcome to join the new movement of Jesus. And now you can watch the 2 Bible Project videos on the Acts of the Apostles. And read the book yourself. It is a great adventure story.